you bestow upon us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, committee members, for being here today, as well as everybody who is seated in the room. I want to take a special moment to thank all of the staff here that has helped us out from all the different groups, and specifically Miss Allison Bailey, who has only been with us a few months now, and she is legislative assistant for this committee. And then we also have Miss Brooke Partridge back there. She is interning with us, so we're excited. And we've also got Jack back here, who's learning to keep everybody straight, supporting Senator Robertson.
God bless
We give him an extra prayer every night. So we're going to talk about a few things today, and the first thing I want to review really quickly is we have Senate rules, which for the committee, which normally would be in our folders. We're going to get those up back in there. But I want to remind everybody that this is a very active committee. We have a lot of bills that come through, and what we're going to try and do is not jam-pack everything to the end. I think the Lieutenant Governor has made it clear that we should start moving some things earlier, but would rather do 1 or 2 bills in a meeting rather than trying to do 9 in a meeting. It's a lot of overwhelming work. We're also going to do our very best to get the agenda published the day before, to give first and foremost our committee members the opportunity to look through those, but also for the public and everyone else here. I can't always promise you that will happen, because sometimes a specific circumstance will arise, but that will be our intent, and Allison will be the person who will be working on the agenda, putting it together. Certainly those bills should be online. If for some reason we have an amendment or a committee substitute to that, we will try to have those available in our office, which is 421, as most people know, right outside here, that you could pick up a copy of that if we don't already have that published online. We'll also do our best to have electronic copies as well to email. Next thing is when we do have amendments, which we will have at different times, if it is a minor amendment, it's a word change or a date change, etc., doing those, I'll call it on the fly, are very reasonable, acceptable. If it's a big material change to the bills, though, and you want to bring an amendment, I'm going to need that brought to me 24 hours in advance so we can make sure we vetted that out, and that'll be something that I'll work on. I'll certainly ask our Vice Chairman, Senator Robertson, to help, and specifically also Legislative Counsel, who helps us to make sure that those are going to work properly. So I just want to review kind of the logistics first of the committee. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay, seeing none. As everyone is aware, all bills that were reported favorably out of this committee and got to rules, but then were never heard on the Senate floor, got reported back to the committee. So we have right now quite a few bills that came back to the committee, and they're not all in your folder right now, but we're going to reanalyze what they are. But there is, just to give you kind of a high-level overview, there were ones relating to cameras in school zones, booting for cars. We had ones limiting certain things in school zones again. That was a second bill. Watercraft education, law enforcement accreditation, gypstick credentials, non-lethal use of tasers, and other stuff. So there's a group here, and there's about 10 bills or so. We're going to reanalyze those because some of them were substituted at the end from what were originally put here. And when it's reasonable and feasible, we will combine bills that are in the same code section or the same subject matter in order to make sure we ease the legislative process. So we'll be going through those, and then we do have 2 subcommittees, as you may remember. Bills will be assigned to subcommittees sometimes, sometimes not. It really depends on the depth of them, if we think that they need more input and research, and I want to thank everybody who has served on those. Once they're assigned to a subcommittee, it is up to the subcommittee chair to host those meetings. And the last thing I want to say is we need a request from the bill's author to hear the bill. If we don't get a request, we will just make the grand assumption that you probably didn't want to move forward with your bill for whatever reason. You may have had it tacked on something else. You might have had a change of heart. Either way, it's fine with me, but until we get a request, and then once we get a request, we'll review those requests and decide what's going to make it to each one of the meetings. We do have our meeting schedule is the same as last year. We canceled yesterday's because of all the events happening with the Eggs and Issues breakfast as well as the Pro Tem's luncheon. But we'll be meeting on Wednesdays and, of course, today on Thursdays. I know Thursdays sometimes are tough when we're not in legislative session on Friday, but we're going to do our best to make sure we have a good, solid quorum and everybody can be here to participate in the process. Any questions? Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have Austin come up, and he's going to give us an overview of what has happened up to this point in the Public Safety Committee's background. What do we cover, the things that we do, just to give a refresher for everybody here. And the last but not least, I'll remind everybody on the committee as well who are in the audience, all the bills which are in our committee can be found at any time on the legislative website by simply clicking on the advanced search button and searching by committee and this calendar year, and you can see all of those bills and the status from which those bills are in. So I will turn it over to you, Austin. Dazzle us with your update.
Well, thank you, members, for having me here today. It's an honor to be with you. My name is Austin Bryson. I'm at the Office of Policy and Legislative Analysis, and I will be the analyst for this committee this session. I do realize that it is late on Thursday, first week of session, and I promise I won't keep you too long. So, like Senator Albers was saying, I'm just going to briefly go through kind of what public safety does. I know that seems pretty obvious to most of you, but I know each session it's really easy to get honed in on one or two specific topics, and it's easy to forget just how wide-ranging these committees can be. So first, I'm going to just look at the general areas of focus here. The Committee on Public Safety has general jurisdiction over legislation related to the security and safety of Georgia citizens. Additionally, the committee reviews most legislation related to the licensing of drivers and safety on Georgia's roads. Now, I didn't write that beautiful language. That came right off the committee website, so there's the official definition for you. Below there are the key areas of the committee. I'm going to go through each of those in turn, just briefly and in a little more depth. So first up is motor vehicle safety. Now, I got this information here off of the Office of Highway Safety website, and a lot of it just goes through 2021 because that was the most up-to-date, fully worked out information. But speed-related fatalities represented 22% of all traffic fatalities that occurred on Georgia roadways in 2021. Alcohol-impaired and drug-related crashes increased by 14% from 8,500 in 2020 to nearly 10,000 in 2021. 54% of all motor vehicle traffic crashes had at least one confirmed or suspected distracted driver. And for those passenger vehicle occupants who were fatally injured, 52% were unrestrained. Now, just quickly, that chart below there, one trend that I saw that I thought was interesting was back when this chart starts in 2012, the difference between rural and urban traffic fatalities is very close. You got 589 to 603, but as it goes on, urban becomes nearly double that of rural. And I thought that was a bit of an interesting trend over the course of the decade.
And I'm just going to stop you for one moment. I think all this analysis is very important, but looking at your fourth bullet, for those passenger vehicles occupants who are fatally injured, more than a half is because they didn't wear a seatbelt. The one simplest thing that we can do to save somebody's life. I think that's very important to point out. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator. And so next topic that this committee covers largely is DDS procedures. So Georgia maintains 67 Department of Driver Service locations statewide. Digital licensing is probably something you've all heard quite a bit about. It's a new feature. It's making headlines. The office has received 2 grants recently. One was a grant award of $117,000 that'll be used to fund a traffic data analyst, which I drive from Woodstock every day, so I'm very happy. Anybody that's analyzing traffic patterns, so it's good with me. There's also a $240,000 grant that was given for the Georgia Electronic Conviction Processing System. And just as sort of an example, I've put these out throughout the presentation. HB 120 is an example of a bill that dealt with standards for issuance and revocation of limited driving permits for certain offenders.
And before you go on to the committee members, who else has downloaded their digital driver's license? All right, Senator Jackson, anyone else? Very simple process to do. Go to your Apple Wallet or your equivalent on your Android phone. You'll take a few pictures of it. It'll submit. It'll come back. This is a legal ID. You can use it at the airport for other forms of identification. Great thing. If for some reason you misplace your wallet, you don't have something with you, this is a good solution.
So next up, fire protection and safety. That's another big topic here. Georgia has 487 fire stations and departments. In 2022, there were 69 home fire fatalities reported by U.S. News Media. One thing that I found interesting is how Georgia fire departments compare to the national average. The national average has a 70% volunteer rate. Georgia is slightly under half. We almost have double the career firefighters as the national average, which I think is pretty impressive. Next up, we have law enforcement agencies. So Georgia has 11 state law enforcement agencies. This ranges from larger agencies like the GBI to smaller agencies like the Georgia World Congress Center Authority. Stone Mountain Park also has quite an operation. They have the Stone Mountain Park Department of Public Safety, which I had no idea it was such a large operation. The DPS provides police, fire, emergency medical, and rescue services to the park's visitors and employees. Another thing that I just wanted to put in here briefly is post-certification, and most of you know what that is, but the Peace Officer Standards and Training Council puts out the standards for training our police officers in the state, and that is an extremely important part of making sure that our officers stay safe, our citizens stay safe. And one thing people I think forget about is even from a legal side of things in the courtroom, if you've ever been in a criminal proceeding, you've certainly heard a prosecutor establishing post-certification with an officer and having them explain that, which is very important.
And Austin, just to clarify for everybody, post also will investigate and can potentially pull someone's credentials from them if there was something found to be problematic or illegal in their actions.
Right. Thank you. So in Georgia, there's 159 elected sheriffs, one for each county. There's approximately 350 local police departments, 12 marshal offices, and approximately 12 county police departments. Here, the example bill I used for this category was HB 142, which dealt with the establishment of unified campus police forces. So the next topic's pretty straightforward, so I just got an example here, but school bus rules are important, and this committee does deal with that. HB 301 was the example I used here, and that dealt with violations of improperly passing a school bus and speeding in a school zone when captured by cameras.
Why don't you go back one for it?
Absolutely.
It's a good reminder for everybody here. So just take a moment and remember when you can, especially if you're on the other side of the street, pass a school bus. Only if the highway is fully divided. Make sure that you don't do that. There are cameras on a lot of our school buses, too, that capture people to doing that. We want to make sure the kiddos are safe. Yes, ma'am.
Your number with...
Would you talk to the microphone?
Oh, and my mask. Your number when you're talking about officers, are they... I'm assuming they are included, but school resource officers, are they in that number that you quoted?
Let me go back here. They, I'm not sure that they would be in this number here. They very well might be. I don't know if they'd be included in the local police departments. I think that's mostly city, but
We have a resident expert right here, Vice
I
Chairman.
think that's a great question, because I know Cobb County school system has their own police department, Muskogee County school system. Most of the universities and colleges have their own, so I think that would be great if we make sure that all of those numbers are part of that.
Okay.
Because that's something that gets missed way too often and needs to be there, because Cobb County doesn't need resource officers because they have a police department. Thereby, they have the resource officers already there. So in Harris County, the resource officers in our school were provided by the Harris County Sheriff's Office. So it's a sharing of resources. So great question, Senator.
You're quite
We
welcome.
need to add those in.
Let's break those out to Austin maybe for a future meeting.
sounds good. Thank you. So next up, we have firearms. I mean, I think we all know how this applies, but I did want to point out that some firearm bills will go to judiciary. Some come to this committee, for instance, constitutional carry. Some of that goes to judiciary, but I've used two examples here of SB 277 and SB 344 from the 2022 session. These bills dealt with, the as introduced of 277 dealt with extended exemptions for weapons carry laws for certain court officials inside of a courthouse, and 344 dealt with, it was a bill that required training to possess certain firearms. Now, I'm a little hesitant to show you this slide as much as I like to shoot off fireworks on 4th of July, but it is important. So the firework industry has become a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States, and according to the National Fire Protection Association, fireworks started over 12,000 known fires in the U.S. in 2021, including over 2,000 structure fires, 300 vehicle blazes, and nearly 10,000 others. The NFPA estimated that fireworks could start some 19,000 fires annually in the United States.
I do want to comment, when Georgia passed the fireworks law, when we did years ago, one of the things we put in there is the ability, based on us having a drought or other weather conditions, to suspend some of the times and dates that we allow fireworks for some of the very reasons that you're citing.
So here I've got rules of the road, another category that we deal with here. The two pictures I have are what reminded me of traffic violations the most. I've got Spaghetti Junction from my mini drives from Marietta to UGA during my internships during rush hour, as well as my current exit at the Capitol, where I often see people trying to move over 7 lanes to get off there last minute because they didn't read the signs. So the two example bills that I used here were HB 119 and 541. Both of these just dealt with procedures for passing vehicles. For instance, 119 modified the procedures for passing stationary vehicles other than authorized emergency vehicles. All right, so next up, the Department of Public Safety. That was created back in 1937. They oversee the day-to-day operations of the Georgia State Patrol, Capitol Police, and the Motor Carrier Compliance Division, so they have large-ranging responsibilities. And then last but certainly not least, the GBI, and it deserves its own slide for sure, as much as they do within our state. The GBI is broken up into several divisions. They have the Division of Forensic Sciences, the Georgia Crime Information Center, the Investigative Division, which does a significant amount of investigations on officer-involved shootings, the Legal Division, Medical Examiner's Office, and the Crisis Intervention Team. With regard to them, I'm sure many of you have been down to the GBI offices and labs where they do significant amounts of their work. It's quite an operation they have down there. I was fortunate enough to go myself back when I was an intern at the Cobb DA and see the autopsies and the crime labs, and they're a very impressive operation over there. Georgia's very fortunate to have them. But with that said, I promised I'd keep it brief, and I think that covers the major categories of the Public Safety Committee. So thank you so much for letting me be here today, and I'll turn it back over to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. Great job. I do want to add the Department of Corrections, which is our prisons, even though sometimes they will fall under state institutions and properties for the committee for the actual physical building. A lot of the legislation will come through us as well. And a lot of these different departments will connect. As an example, if we're working something on with the governor's highway safety, well, the first people we're going to talk to is Georgia State Patrol, right? Because they're out there on the roads all the time. We'll be working with our Georgia Sheriff's Association, with Georgia Chiefs of Police. We'll work with sometimes the DOT to make sure that we're connecting those dots. We have a lot of partners in here. Same with the Firefighter Association, the Fire Chiefs Association. We've got a lot of groups that are very well represented here at the Capitol that can't have all the folks in their profession here at any time, and they send some pretty darn good people down to speak on their behalf. So I appreciate that. I do want to mention just a couple more things before we open up to the committee, because two of us in this committee, Senator Jackson and myself, were both swatted right after Christmas. And it is an unfortunate incident. You may have heard both of us talking about it either in the news or coming from the Senate well. But for a quick update on that, to remind everybody how dangerous that is, please talk to the people that you know. Talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to younger folks who may not realize that that's not a prank. It's very serious. We could literally harm people or they could lose their lives. Really big special thanks, though, to Georgia State Patrol and GBI for the work they're doing. It is very difficult to find the people that do this type of work because of the technology. However, we're pretty close. So I want to thank them as well as all our local and federal law enforcement. It's a team to make all those things happen. Also want to just say that I'm sure you all heard Mayor Dickens spoke at the Exit Issues Breakfast yesterday, as well as there's a lot of PR between him and Chief Shearbaum here in Atlanta for the tremendous job they have done to reduce the crime rate in our capital city. That is certainly worth celebrating. A big part of that is the support of our law enforcement, the very intentional work, as well as the crime suppression unit, which Governor Kemp put into place. Many of us have ridden along with the crime suppression unit that's going out 3 to 4 days a week with a complement over of 100 officers from Georgia State Patrol, bringing in other state agencies, as well as working with the Atlanta Police, Fulton County Police and Sheriff's Office. So a lot of good things are happening. Is it perfect? The answer is no. But are we trending in the right direction? Absolutely, and that's a wonderful thing. Last thing I want to bring up today is, aside from the 2 standing subcommittees that we have in place, and they are again designed to vet legislation, on occasion, depending on a specific need, we will assign a special subcommittee for the purpose of looking at something that's out of our normal parameters. And in this case, we had a lot of issues in 2023 that really stem back, candidly, for almost 50 years, but they really came to a head in 2023 with the Fulton County Jail, with 10 people losing their lives, overcrowding. You all saw, I'm sure, in one way, shape, or form that on the news and the pictures. So I asked clearly the most experienced person that walks in this building every day in the legislature, which is Senator Randy Robertson, our majority whip, to lead that subcommittee, because as a retired deputy sheriff and a major, he's actually both worked in and managed a jail. And he has held 2 committee meetings. I want to let him give you an update, but I will tell you, since he held his first committee, there's no overcrowding right now. Suddenly, things are getting done much quicker and much faster by a little oversight. So kudos to the great work he's been doing, and all the people who have realized with shining a little light on something can get people to get things done a bit more efficiently. So, Senator Robertson, would you give us an update, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Briefly, I want to thank Chairman Albers for this opportunity, but also I want to thank everybody who we've reached out to. There's some of us, and Senator Jones himself works with a sheriff's agency in his district and understands a lot of this. And when this information came out, the first thing we understand is the vast majority of people don't understand the role of a county jail, what exactly it's supposed to do in relationship to the court. So when we started the meeting, these meetings were basically, the first 2 were basically educational meetings for the committee members. We brought in experts, jail experts. We brought in the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. We brought in the Prosecutorial Attorney's Council to basically explain the system, if you will. The Sheriff's Office came in and explained what the jail does. And as many people have admitted, and as was brought out in the meeting, there is a misunderstanding, a common misunderstanding within the community about what a jail is and what a prison is. They are not the same by any stretch of the imagination, nor is the responsibilities of the individuals operating those facilities. Very different. One facility is there to hold individuals who have not been convicted of a crime. They have only been accused of a crime. And so we looked at the process there. And remember, our primary focus to start with is overcrowding. And so we talked to the sheriff, talked about the facilities, the things that were going on in there. Then in the second meeting, the sheriff came back, spoke a little more after the jail experts had spoken in the previous meeting. And then the PAC came in, Pete Scandalakis and his incredible team, and pointed out explained the judicial process, the normal judicial process moving through. Our next goal at our third meeting, which the announcement will be coming up shortly, will be to have some experts from the local prosecutor's office to come in, and we're going to look at the process of how cases are selected, how the process is used to decrease the population within the jail by moving the individuals in the jail into the judicial system so that their cases can be adjudicated and they can either be released back into the community or incarcerated if that's what the system determines via the due process. And then in conclusion, after the meetings, I think we'll have representatives from the county commission come in, and therefore we talk about funding, the future opportunities that we believe are on the horizon for the Fulton County Jail, whether that is consolidation of services, whether it's the construction of a new jail or whatever, and also issues around technology and other new ways of doing things that hopefully will alleviate the overcrowding problem here in our capital, and hopefully some ideas that we can use around the state to address this problem if it exists in other communities and to prevent it from happening in other communities. But I feel that our subcommittee hearings have been extremely fruitful, a lot of great information coming out. But I want to say this, any agency that I have reached out to and asked to come in here and offer information, with a special emphasis on the Fulton County Sheriff's Office, nobody has hesitated to come in. Nobody has questioned me saying as if they were nervous about what we were going to ask. Everybody was very forthright, very forthcoming. Chairman Albers pointed this out when this was established. This is not political. And as long as I chair this committee, this subcommittee, it will not be. We need the information so we can solve a legitimate problem, not only for those that run these facilities, but for the men and women, the citizens of Georgia, who are being held there, awaiting to have their constitutional rights of due process. So the meetings are going well, and there'll be an update coming out within the next couple of days on when the next meeting will be. And again, Chairman Albers, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Chairman Robertson. Okay, I'm going to open this up to the committee for any questions or comments. Senator C.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious to know how many of our counties or municipalities that have their own training establishment. Many more, I'm learning, are having them or acquiring them or building them or whatever. And I'm just curious. Any ideas?
You know, that's a great question. I don't know if I could tell you how many specific counties, because sometimes there'll be a local police academy, fire academy, sheriff may have the academy. We have, obviously, GIPSTIC is the main one, which most of you have
Right.
been to, and we will have an off-session committee meeting there, as we like to do every couple of years. Director Wigington, who leads GIPSTIC, is got a pretty robust plan to increase our regional academies, so we have more opportunities to do that. I think you're also going to see some pretty exciting things coming down the line that many of us have been working on to increase the hours of training for our new police officers. Things have changed. The world continues to evolve, and I think everybody here believes more training is good, whether that be through one of the regional systems or at the future Atlanta Police Training Center, which I look forward to cutting the ribbon before we know it. Other questions, comments? Yes, Senator Williams.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to go back and look at some of these school cameras, where they're located. Schools are close to a fall line or a freeway. They're not exiting or entrance or exit onto that freeway or fall line, but they have cameras and they turn it into a school zone, but they're not putting flashing lights to let people know when they're operating. I'd also like to require that when they send you a photograph of your tag that you've exceeded the speed, that there's also in that photograph that can wide angle the lens so that the speed that you're being clocked at, that's shown on that radar, also validates what they're writing, because I've had reports that that's not consistent. So I'd like to really look at that issue.
I think it is a great issue. Chairman Jay Collins over in the House and I and Senator Robertson spent quite a bit of time working on it toward the end of the session. We do need to make some updates to that. I agree with everything you're saying. It needs to be done properly. It needs to be consistent. We've had a couple of bad actors, candidly, who are running cameras 24 hours a day, 7 days a week off of school zone times, too, that we'd had to have some conversations. And candidly, we've had a handful of cities who put on standalone cameras. We got an opinion from Legislative Council that that was, in fact, illegal. And most all of them stopped immediately. I want to thank the great work that was done through Butch Ayers with the chiefs of police. So we want to make sure that we're consistent, right? We want to be safe, but we also want to make sure that we have the proper parameters in place. So I would love for you to capture that and work with us, because we're going to be updating that bill probably in the next week or so.
Great.
Because I'd like to get it out sooner than later.
Right, thank
I
you.
think one of the other last things that we'll mention on that is there's been discussion a long time about who owns the cameras and who makes the decision to do that. And in our bill, I'll just remind everybody, we changed that because the schools and the local jurisdictions were battling over that. The candid answer to this is the schools have no play in that at all. The schools do not maintain the roads in front, and the schools do not have someone out there who would otherwise be running radar and pulling people over for driving in a manner that was inconsistent with the law. So that is up to the local jurisdiction to put that into place. Certainly they'll work with the school, but that is on a city, county, or state road, and it should be the law enforcement's jurisdiction's area to make those decisions. So, but we will have a robust debate on that one, Senator, and I look forward to hearing everybody's feedback and input.
Have one more.
Yes, sir.
Watercraft, you mentioned watercraft education. Where I'm at, we have Lake Sinclair, Lake Oconee, and there's been some fatalities on those lakes, and where someone would be in the wrong and create that fatality. There's no insurance at all, and they've killed the breadwinner of a family, and the family has no recourse, nowhere to go. There's no requirement of liability insurance, and it may be something that we have to look at.
That's a very good point. I'd be honored to help you with that, and I think we'll get Chairman Walker as well from the Insurance Committee to probably weigh on that as well.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Other committee members, Senator Robertson.
Yes, one thing is during off session, I received a couple of phone calls about the possibility of agencies running speed traps in a couple of parts of the state, primarily down South Georgia. And so, I'm sorry? So, which shall remain nameless until we get the information. But there are penalties in Georgia code for doing that. And what I hope to do during this session is look at some of those code sections, because something that any good law enforcement officer opposes is revenue-based policing. Mm-hmm. And I want to be really careful as we look at this technology too, that if we're using cameras to send citizens a citation, that the fees being charged are flat fees and they are not, or penalties or flat penalties, and that there are not additional fees being added on top of this that would put the undue financial stress on the operator, thereby appearing to be revenue-based policing. But the fees would have to be something negotiated between the vendor and the municipality, coming from the profit side, if you will, the vendor side, and not from the motorist who is cited. As an example, there was one piece of legislation that may have been Chairman Collins coming over. I think it had a flat fee of $100. I just wanted to make sure. I went to court during off session with a couple of residents who had gotten traffic citations and were really intimidated by the process. And one thing they didn't understand is when the judge set a fine of this, and when they went back to pay it, and I'm sure Senator Jones knows exactly what I'm talking about. They go in the back room, it goes from $100 to $175 because of all of these fees that have been added on by the General Assembly to pay for other things. And while in those types of situations, that's established policy and law, and I understand it, on this technology side, I think it's a little different animal. So we need to be really, I want to look at that. But I am going to follow up on the speed trap issue and be communicating with committee members to see if there may be some action we need to take to better police the police that are attempting to generate unfair revenue from unsuspecting citizens traveling up and down our roads.
Other committee members? As we wrap up, we've got some pretty great experience on this committee, from prosecutions to EMTs and paramedics and firefighters and law enforcement, and even now dads of firefighters like me. So pretty excited for Senator Payne and his son. He's been sharing me a wonderful, wonderful career and the great things his son's doing. So what we do is very meaningful, and we'll say it 1,000 more times of how grateful we are for every one of our first responders that goes out each and every day to protect our community. And we are working outside of this committee, both Senator Robertson and I, to increase the amount of retirement through the POAB, which is the Police Officer Annuity Benefit Fund, as well as the Firefighter Pension Fund. And that will come through a different committee. But I'd ask you to remember that when those hopefully make it through those committees onto the floor in order to help out all of those who protect us. So with no other further comments, this meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you and have a great day.